Pinocchio. The Puppet Theatre. Pinocchio had promised Geppetto he would be a good puppet and go to school. But first he needed a spelling book, and the woodcarver was so poor that he had no money to buy one. Geppetto pulled out his pockets one by one. Then he looked in the rusty old tin on his workbench, but there was not a penny anywhere. With a deep sigh, he put on his coat and went to the door. "Wait for me here, Pinocchio," he said, and disappeared round the corner. A few minutes later he was back with a spelling book, but without his coat. He had sold it in exchange for the book. Pinocchio kissed his father again and thanked him. Then he hurried off to school. As Pinocchio marched along, all sorts of grand ideas ran through his head. "Today I shall learn to read," he said to himself. "Then tomorrow I'll learn writing, and the next day arithmetic. Then I'll earn lots of money and buy my dear father a beautiful new coat." There was no end to his good intentions, until he heard the sound of drums and trumpets in the distance. The music was coming from a brightly painted building, and a large sign announced, "Puppet Theatre." At the entrance stood a man beating a drum to announce the start of a performance, and crowds of people were pushing their way into the hall. Pinocchio couldn't wait to join them. "How much does it cost to go in?" he asked. "Only 2 pence to a young lad like you," replied the man outside. Within seconds, Pinocchio had sold the school book to a street trader, bought a ticket, and dashed into the theatre. Imagine his delight when he saw the actors. There were Harlequin and Punch quarrelling as usual and whacking each other with big sticks. The audience was roaring with laughter. Then Punch caught sight of Pinocchio and there was almost a riot.
"It's our little wooden brother,"
he shouted.
"Come up here and join us."
And all the other puppets rushed onto the stage to greet Pinocchio. What a sight it was! They hugged him and kissed him, gave him friendly pats and pinches, and ended up carrying him in triumph across the stage. But the audience was not amused. They set up a tremendous racket. "We want the play! We want the play!" Suddenly silence fell. The puppet master, a ferocious-looking giant called Fire Eater, with a long beard as black as ink, had burst onto the stage. His eyes were like burning coals, and in his hand was a hideous whip made of snakes and foxes' tails.
"Why do you dare to come into my theatre?"
he bellowed, and he seized Pinocchio and threw him into a log basket in the kitchen. The play started again, and when it finished, Fire Eater called to Punch,
"Bring that puppet here and throw it on the fire. I must have a good blaze to get my meat well roasted for supper."
Pinocchio was brought in, struggling for his life and calling for help. Then his brother Harlequin went down on one knee. "Oh, Fire Eater," he cried, "spare our little brother. He's much too young to die." Fire Eater looked hard at Pinocchio, and he suddenly sneezed. It was a sure sign that his pity had been aroused.
"All right, free him. And throw Harlequin on the fire instead. I must have my meat well roasted."
Just think of poor Harlequin. He had saved Pinocchio, only to die himself. His knees buckled under him and his head flopped forward. 2 of the soldier puppets seized his arms and dragged him towards the flames. At this awful sight, Pinocchio threw himself down before the puppet master. "Have pity, Sir Fire Eater. Pardon brave Harlequin. He's done you no wrong."
"Impossible. The fire is already low, and I must have my meat well roasted."
"In that case," said Pinocchio, "I know my duty. It's not right that Harlequin should die for me. Puppets, bind me and throw me into the flames." At these words, all the puppets burst into tears. How noble Pinocchio was, and how dreadful that he should come to a bad end. Then, suddenly, the room echoed to a deafening noise. Fire Eater had sneezed again, not once, but 3 times. And when he finally stopped, he lifted Pinocchio into his arms.
"You're a good boy. Harlequin shall be freed, and tonight, just this once, I will have to eat my mutton half-cooked.
Sitting Pinocchio on his knee, he asked him where he'd come from and who his father was. And when he heard that Geppetto was just a poor woodcarver, he began sneezing all over again.
Here, take these 5 gold pieces and give them to your father and tell him to keep a better eye on you in the future. Now get home, before I change my mind.
Pinocchio left the hall with the cheers of the puppets ringing in his ears. He was as happy as could be. Now he could buy another schoolbook and give Geppetto a brand new coat. He whistled cheerfully as he marched back along the road, and at every step he tossed a coin high into the air, catching it as it fell. He could hardly wait to see Geppetto's face. Little did he know what fate had in store for him, or how long a journey he had begun. For he had not gone far when he met 2 travellers. A fox who was lame in one foot, and a cat who was blind in both eyes. These unfortunate creatures were helping each other along, the fox leaning on the cat's shoulder and showing him the way.
Good day,
said the fox politely. Good day, Mr. Fox, replied Pinocchio, spinning a coin casually in the air. The gold coin flashed in the sunlight. The fox's lame paw twitched a little, and the cat's blind eyes opened wide like 2 green lamps, but only for a fraction of a second.
I say, said the fox as they all walked along together, what a lot of money you have. And what will you spend it on, if I may ask?
First I shall buy a new coat for my father, and then I shall buy a spelling book. I'm going to school to learn to be good.
Oh dear, said the fox, look at me. Through my long years of study I have lost the use of my paw.
And look at me, said the cat. Through my long years of study I have gone blind.
At that very moment, a blackbird perched in the hedge called out a warning.
Pinocchio, don't listen to those bad men.
But before he could finish, the cat sprang on the bird and gulped him down in a single mouthful, feathers and all.
Nothing but trouble, blackbirds,
sneered the cat. They were all halfway to Pinocchio's house when the fox suddenly stopped.
How would you like to double your money?
he asked. Naturally, Pinocchio was very interested, especially when the cat explained that doubling your money was child's play. If you knew how, you could easily turn 5 gold coins into 500, or even 5,000.
All you have to do, the cat continued, is to bury your money in the field of miracles. You water it, salt it, leave it for 2 hours, and then what do you find? Your money has grown into a magnificent tree laden with hundreds of bright new coins.
Instantly, Pinocchio forgot all about his father, the new coat, and the schoolbook. All he could think of was the wonderful field of miracles. He just had to see it. And at the very next turning, the fox and the cat led him away down a narrow winding lane and out into the country.